Who are Gen Z and how can we reach them for Jesus? Hello and welcome to the Hope Cymru Talk Show. My name is Marcus Nelson and it's a privilege today to be joined by my good friend Charis. Charis, it's fantastic to be able to talk together.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
I'm a very old person, Charis. I'm probably categorized in these ways of thinking about things as a millennial, but you're part of, broadly speaking, what's described as Gen Z. So in 1996, 97 to about 2010, 2012. What does that category mean, Charis?
Yeah, well, to be honest, when you said Gen Z, I'll be honest, I did a very Gen Z thing and I chat GPT'd, what dates are they? And so I'm 96, so I feel like I'm on the cusp, but I feel like a lot about my childhood and growing up and then like the generation that I'm in is quite Gen Z, but I feel like the term is used a lot to obviously represent the dates you're born, but actually what does that actually mean? Because obviously, you know, I feel like I can't speak for all Gen Zers. Like, you know, everybody is different, but there is a lot of similarities in, you know, the people that were born in those years.
So what does that look like, say, in terms of technology?
Yeah, so I would say people in Gen Z like grew up with technology. Like we're used to having Wi-Fi in our house, used to having phones. I personally wasn't allowed a phone until I was 15 and it was a Nokia brick.
Very civilized.
Yeah, but now like all of my friends had phones. I don't know if people remember, but like people had BBM. That was the thing in my school and they would be like texting on their Blackberries to everyone. And so like everybody was able to communicate with each other. I had a pen pal and that was like, I don't know, like that was how I wrote to her. But then as soon as like I got Facebook, like that just went out the window. So like those kind of things just weren't really part of our lives. Technology just made everything quicker, easier.
Technology was part of it, but it wasn't. You know, those that have been born after 2012 say they'll kind of never really know what time that they did.
Yes, yeah.
It's like different in that way. How about just sort of like values, outlook, you know, what, all that sort of side of things? Chris, what would you say, you know, as a member of Gen Z? How do you think about these things?
This probably doesn't help in answering your question because I feel like from what I've seen on the internet, I probably feel like I'm a bit of an outlier in terms of a lot of the Gen Z culture. And so, yeah, I don't know if I can properly answer your question, but in terms of like, did you say the values?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think like, okay, maybe that's a lie. Maybe I probably do adhere to some of the values where it's like, you know, we're now in the generation where like the mum and the dad, they both work, you know, like women are going to work all the time. And so like growing up, it's like my mum was a housewife. My mum, you know, dropped us off at school. She cooked all of our meals. Like that was her role in the family. And so that's what I grew up seeing. And that was like very normal in most of my friendship groups. But now the generation that I'm in, I'm like, obviously I would go to work, you know, obviously I can't even imagine not both of us working and if we do decide to have kids, like both of us being like, who actually is going to stay at home? Like, what's the plan? Like, it's not like a given. And so I feel like, you know, the things around like career and like money and like, and I know they can sometimes be like, ooh, like money shouldn't be like an ambition of yours like that. But I feel like the reality of it is like people do value that and it is like seen as successful to progress in your job, to make money, all of those kind of things are important, I'd say.
What about global awareness and sort of like international experience, those sort of things as well?
Yeah, I will say there's a mix. I think obviously we have the internet at our fingertips, so we do see a lot more about the world online without ever having to travel there. But I would still say in my experience from conversations with other people my age is that actually the stuff you see online is so, I don't know what the right word is, maybe filtered, maybe biased, maybe like, you know, it's always coming from a certain angle depending on where you've seen it. You know, if it's from a travel vlog or if it's from another person's podcast or whatever it is, it's definitely coming at it from an angle rather than you go visiting it yourself. So I will say, even though we feel like we see more of the world and there's no like, I don't know, I never heard of that before. There is still a little bit of an element of that because you only see the bits that are curated for you in your algorithm and what you see.
There's probably a sense, guys, in which, you know, these categories, we don't want to be too rigid with them, you know, in terms of what it means. Like, you know, that somebody who's born before or after can't speak to this.
Yes, of course not.
We don't want to sort of see it like that at all. But it would be fair to say one of the younger people that would fall within this sort of broad age category are quite disconnected from church within wider Britain and within Wales at the moment.
Yeah, I think, again, it's exactly what you said, where it's like, it's not just like, if you're born in these years, then you're this, this, and this. It's obviously not that. But from having, gone to church all my life, I would probably say, to be fair, growing up, there was quite a few kids my age, but then you reach the teenage years, and then you're looking around and you're like, not really seeing people my age. And even now, like, I look around, I'm like, I'm not really seeing people my age in church. Like, there's just more interesting things going on a Sunday, apparently, a lion, can't blame them, sports, like all sorts of things that, like, the world just seems a bit busier. And I don't think it's really like, speaking to my grandma, she'd be like, yeah, you go to church on a Sunday. Like, that's just the thing. My dad didn't grow up in a Christian household, so it wasn't exactly like part of his weekly routine. And yet at school, like, he knows all the songs that you sing in school. And so I feel like it was a bigger part. But nowadays, culture is, rightly and wrongly in different ways, but embracing so many more things, so many more cultures, so many more religions, so much more, that it then means that church, Christianity, all of those kind of things is kind of just one of the many. And so it almost gets a bit diluted and just becomes one of the many things to experience, rather than this is a huge part of our culture, this is a huge part of our family, this is a huge part of your life.
Yeah. Why is it, Charis? I do see that as well. People sort of come through church and then quite often teenage years and things will do other things. It's always a sadness because, if I ever have, I try my very hardest not to go to, say, Tesco or B&Q on a Sunday.
Yeah.
If I ever have to go to Tesco or B&Q on a Sunday, they're very, very depressing places. And when you look at people's faces, it really says it all. It's frantic, it's stressful.
Yeah.
It's just like one day merges into the other. What is it that, often people in their teenage years think that there's better things on offer than church and Sundays? What are those things?
I guess in answer to these probably next few questions, I can only really speak for myself, and just think back, many years ago to when I was a teenager. It feels like a long time ago, especially now that I'm meeting like current uni students who are born in like 2006, and in my head they're still kids, which now feels like an old person thing to say. But me as a teenager, even though I grew up in a Christian household, and even though I would say I was a Christian, on a Sunday, the thought of waking up early, going to a church where there wasn't really anyone my age, and it's just, I don't think anyone I know is going to be watching this, but like the sermons were a bit long. I couldn't really relate to them. They were either long and boring and like super like theological and like a deep dive, and I'm just like, I don't understand the words you're saying. Or they were like, they tried to use anecdotes, but they were just anecdotes. I was just like, I have no relation to this. I cannot relate. It doesn't affect my life. Like, I don't really want to listen to this on a Sunday morning when I could be tucked up in bed. The songs, to be fair, a lot of the churches I went to, the songs were good. And now I'd be like, oh, what a banger. Like if any of those like 2000s songs came on. But I think now, you mentioned the church in Wales, you mentioned, the church that we're part of. I just think in my teenage years, I would have never heard an organ anywhere else except in like the Phantom of the Opera, where it's like a big theatrical thing. And so like, if I'm being, and this is the thing, like this is going to maybe annoy so many people, and so many people will disagree with me, and that is completely fine because like I said, I don't speak for everybody, but I think for me, it would just have been very hard to take the organ seriously, the songs seriously, because everyone's singing them. Doesn't feel like anybody really knows them. They're quite high pitched. I can't keep up. I don't really know. And so like I would just end up just disconnecting from church because there wasn't really a part of it that I could connect with. Couldn't connect with the talk, couldn't connect with the songs, couldn't connect with the people. Was half asleep anyways.
Yeah, yes, yeah. And none of those things made it easy. Over these last weeks, because you've been involved in leading, setting up, starting a new evening service. Tell us just a little bit about that. Why did you think about an evening for one thing? And what have you seen happening over the last weeks as we've done that? Yeah,
well, I think, if I'm being honest, like the reason I set up the evening services, I came and I was like, not really seeing many people my age, would love to have more of that. But also, couldn't really see myself. I basically tried to emulate the evening service based on the service that I went to at university. Absolutely loved. Felt like I could completely invite any of my friends, any of my non-Christian friends, and I felt confident that every element of it they would have a good time with, they would be able to connect with. And I think that was kind of the goal of the evening service, was to make it as easy as possible for people to come along, to remove like any barriers. And so if time is a barrier, especially for uni students, especially for like, you know, teenagers, when they hit that 17, 16 age and they're like, you know, mum and dad can leave me at home on my own, so I don't really need to go to church with them. I can just chill at home, don't want to wake up early. I totally get it. And so having it in the evening kind of removes that. The idea that it was aimed at that generation meant that the generation going to the services would look around and hopefully see other people their age. This is the thing, like, it's very hard to gear a service at everyone, at all ages, backgrounds, races, socioeconomics, class, like everyone, and be able to reach every single person. That is, I don't know, if you find someone that can do that, I'd love to meet them. So just, yeah, having a service that you could be like, it's for everyone, but it is aimed at this generation, because the truth is they are the missing generation, you know?
And you're seeing lots of them coming into church.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we're still early days. I'd say like 9 weeks in, but we are seeing, this is the thing, we're seeing new faces, like people that weren't coming to the morning service, or people that had come to the morning service when they were younger, for whatever reason, stopped coming, and now, whether it's the style of the evening service, whether it's the time of the evening service, or whether it's just like a personal invitation, it's like, I would love to see you there. I don't know what the reason is. I would love to, maybe I should ask them. But yeah, we've seen a lot more people from, I'd say, the age bracket of about 16 to 35. I would say more of them coming.
Which is hugely exciting, Charis. And sometimes people would say, you know, people on the outside that don't go to church already, they sort of heard what we're about, they know what we're selling, they don't want it, and therefore they don't want to come to church. That doesn't seem to be what you're finding, Charis. So you're finding like that among that actual age group, that sort of missing generation away, that there is real openness, because they haven't necessarily heard the good news of Jesus before. Yeah, or at least I don't think they've heard the actual good news. I think they'd probably be aware of who Jesus is. You know, people have heard the name, people know what Christmas is, people probably say Jesus in their everyday language, not in the way that we would probably use his name. So people know who he is, but I don't think they know the full extent of the effect that he can have on people's lives. I don't think, and again, I'm generalizing, but I don't think people actually think that he is an important, like the most important thing in so many people's lives. I think they probably think he's just this like thing that my grandma used to talk about, or he's just this like thing that like some people are super into, and like, you know, it makes them feel comforted, and like that's it. That's what, again, what he's watered down to. And I don't think people quite know the extent, but I also don't think that, and again, generalizing, but speaking for myself as well, but like as a Christian, I don't think that we are very good at communicating that, because, well, for many different reasons, but even like nowadays in society, we want to be more tolerant, we want to be more inclusive, but that almost means that we don't want to be too forceful, and in doing so, like not being too excited about our faith, because we're like, oh, we don't want to offend anyone. Yes, yeah. But actually, I want to tell my friend that like Jesus is everything, but I don't want to offend them. So then you're like, oh, I don't know what to do with that. Yeah, and it always seems a strange thing to me, because, you know, people say, oh, we don't want to Bible bash, we don't want to, you know, upset people or proselytize, whatever way they put it. And you're sort of wanting to say, but that's not what we want. Yeah. Nobody wants to do that. We want to introduce them to Jesus, and we know Jesus, we love him. We can't believe, you know, what he's done for us, what he's doing in our lives. And like, why would we not want exactly to know as well? Like if I watch a new TV show, like a while ago I was watching Ted Lasso, and literally everyone I spoke to, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so good. It's about this. I think you would really love it. Like you should totally check it out. Like just talking about all the time. Yeah. So why don't I do the same? Yeah, it's exactly the same. And it's always the way in the Bible, isn't it? The people, like all the disciples, others, like they meet Jesus and then they just like run off and tell their family and friends. And they're like, I've met the guy that Moses wrote about in the Bible, and I've met the guy the prophets wrote about. I just want you to come and meet him. And then, like, that's Andrew, isn't it? Yeah. He just says, like, he just brings his brother Peter Jesus, and then Nathaniel, Philip meets Jesus and says, we found one of the most by the law, with whom the prophets also spoke. And then he just says to Nathaniel, like, come and meet him. And then remember, like, Nathaniel says, oh, but can anything good come from Nazareth? And then I love the way in which Philip says, just come and see.
Yeah. This is the thing I say to people. I'm like, do you know what? When it comes to like things like Alpha or a service or whatever it is, I will literally be like, come one time. Just come one time. If you hate it, that's fine. No hard feelings. You don't have to come again.
Full money back guarantee.
Exactly. Even though it cost you no money, but I will give it back to you. But I'm just like, just come one time, check it out, and honestly, like, give me your honest opinion. Like, and I think that is the thing with my generation nowadays, and why people, like, I'll be honest, there's like a bajillion podcasts out there. There are so many, but it is because people love to hear other people's opinions. People love to hear the controversial discussions. You might not want to put yourself, and I'll be honest, I don't want to put myself out there and be like, this is what I think on all these controversial topics. Please attack me in the comments. I don't want to do that. But people are still interested in the topics. They want to know what people think. They want to hear both sides of the argument, and they want to share their own opinion. And so I feel like, people are interested in faith. People are interested in Jesus. They just might not know where to go for it. And I think kind of what you were saying about the disciples going out and just getting people to come along and join them. Jesus feeds the 5,000. Imagine if we had and that's just the men. That's just the men they counted. Imagine if we had 5,000 in our churches. That's a mega church. Well, I maybe don't want to be a vicar of that. That's too much stress. But can you imagine that many people sitting on our pews, sitting in our churches? Like, that is wild. And that's without the internet. That's without, Instagram, which I will say that is how you communicate with my generation. But that was just word of mouth. And so I feel like it's a two-pronged thing of you need the people in your churches going out, just raving about it, raving about Jesus, raving about church, and getting people to just be like, come along, just come with me, just invite them. And then on the flip side, we as churches, we need to be ready for that. Like, we need to be ready for that many people to come in. We need to be ready from people of all different ages, backgrounds, everything to come in. We need to be not boring and put them off once they do come in.
Absolutely, because it's amazing, the different parts of the world. In South Korea, for example, 5,000 to 10,000 is considered a middle-sized church. There's pretty much like nothing in the United Kingdom. That sort of size, and that's just like
crazy.
That's mid-range.
When I was in Seoul, there was this big church with that many people, and then the outbuildings, and there's like thousands of people in those outbuildings just watching the screen of the main building.
It's amazing, Chris.
Wild.
And it's like it has happened like that in this country in the past. It's been quite a long time since that has happened, but when the church does speak about Jesus, and Jesus is at the center of the life of the church, he does like draw everybody to himself, doesn't he? He's magnetic, and as in the Gospels, people like ran to him. They crossed over the sea to come and meet him. They tried to tear the tiles off roofs. They did anything they could, to reach out and to touch him. And when the church isn't growing in that way, when people don't want to come, they're not interested. That's always like a sad sign, really, of where we're lacking in that way.
Exactly. And it definitely begs the question. You're like, well, obviously the problem is not what we're offering. Like, we have the best USP. Like, Jesus is everything. And like you said, he just brought people to him. And like, there's all these other churches that are full to the brim, and they have Jesus. So if we've got Jesus, what's gone wrong? Like, surely we should be looking at those churches and looking at what happened all those years ago here in Wales and being like, okay, what was it there? What about that? And obviously, again, this is the thing with the generations, time does change. So maybe what worked back then isn't going to work exactly now, like in terms of literally the way you advertise or whatever it is, but you can definitely capture an essence and I don't want to use the word vibe, but like, what was the vibe of the time?
The essence, the substance is the same. Jesus and all that he's done for us on the cross, dying, rising again, sending into heaven, coming again to fix the world. That he is, the very center of reality. That he made everything. He's the actual person who made the universe. He's always lived with his Father, and that he is going to fix the world. He's going to set it all right. So all those things are always true. We want to like say those same things, so God, in like new ways, fresh ways,
Yeah.
so that we can reach out as widely as possible. What sort of ways can we be doing that? You know, lots of people will think, oh, we don't have any young people in our church, and we don't really even know how to begin telling them about Jesus. Where could somebody begin who wants to do that?
Well, I'd say I'll answer from a church perspective and from like a personal perspective. But I think like from a personal perspective, start with literally your friends and your family and just think of it as simply as like, if I'm excited about this TV show or if I love my sports team or whatever it is, you're going to chat, you're going to talk about it. And so why can't Jesus be the same? Like my favorite thing at university to do is like I'd be on a night out, we'd be in the club and you just chat to people. You know how it is. You just chat to people. And I'd be talking to a guy and he'd be like, oh, so what are you doing this weekend? I'd be like, well, out tonight, got church in the morning, then going to lunch with friends. And you just say it very casually, like it's just a part of my week. Like, and they'd be like, sorry, wait, you go to church? And you're like, yeah. And then you just start chatting. Like it doesn't have to be this like you said the term Bible bashing. It doesn't have to be like a Bible bashing thing. It doesn't have to be an intense, like, right, I'm going to right now try to convert you. It's just casual chat. And the truth is people are curious. People do have questions. Like I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but I'm sure there is a stat for the number of people that actually have Christians in their circle. And I don't think it's very high. So I do think that, you know, when people meet a Christian, they're like, okay, now's my chance to actually ask all these questions that I was a bit curious about. So, yes, sorry, my brain space. What was the second part of the question? The church.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that way, you know, we can sometimes feel, oh, you know, if I tell my friends about Jesus, they might ask me all kinds of things that I don't know the answer to. Whereas what you're saying, Charis, and it's the same as what, you know, there's different groups, Billy Graham Association, Church Society, others have said, the most effective way sharing the gospel is not even necessarily like reading like loads and loads of like really, really complicated theological
Thank
books.
goodness, because I'm not on that.
The most effective way is just inviting people to church.
Yeah.
Why is that, Charis? Because somebody might say, no, the most effective and important way of doing evangelism is this or that. Why is it that the research is saying it's really just inviting people to church? What does a person experience when they come to a church where Jesus is at the center?
Yeah, well, I glad you added where Jesus is at the center, because the sad reality is like there's a lot of churches where if you did invite someone to that church, it actually would put them off. And so that was my flip answer of like what the church should be doing is being ready to, like, you know, if all our congregation members are out there telling their friends and family about Jesus and be like, come along to church with me, that is amazing. But if we are then not welcoming, if we are then preaching extremely long, boring sermons and, you know, not having things that people can connect with and building relationships, you know, I think, and again, I have no stats to back this up, but from conversations, anecdotally, the conversations I've had with people is like, when they come to a church for the very first time, they are not going to remember what the preach was on. They're not going to remember what songs we sung. They're not going to remember any of that, but they will remember how they felt. They will remember the conversations that they had with people and like how they felt walking through those doors and leaving. And it's how they feel in that very first visit that's going to make them want to come back again. But in answer to also about Gen Z, like, I'll be honest, our generation is quite flaky. You know, we're used to things being immediate. We're used to like something. This is my mother-in-law's pet peeve, where she will say, like, I really hate it when people make plans and then something better comes along and then they cancel their plans. And I get it. Like, I am such a person where if I say, yes, I will be at something, I will be there. But I know not everyone is. That's probably what, back to your earlier question, that's probably one of the values that I hold strong. But especially at uni, like I would notice with my friends, like they'd be like, yeah, I'll come to that. Oh, I overslept or I was this, and like, it's no big deal. And so, you know, you can invite people all you want, but like the truth is my generation is quite flaky. But I think, yeah, we just got to keep inviting, you know, people might say no, rejection is not fun, but it's okay. Like you just keep inviting them. And the truth is like when people are having a hard time, they're not going to want you to answer all their super deep theological questions or have like a big, what does this verse say? You know, they're just going to want someone to listen and to care. And I feel like that is exactly what Jesus did. And that like makes all the difference for people, I think.
There's not many places, I think it's fair to say, Charis, that you would experience anything like church, the reality of what church is with Jesus at the center. Shows now, all the different places that people would have come together in the past tend to be closing down, and people are more isolated, and society's fragmenting. I think so. What church can and should be is the most amazing thing in all the world, and Jesus can speak through the sermon and the welcome and in songs and just the greeting. But I used to be at quite a large church in London. I remember once that somebody had said that one of the most powerful things they had found in that service was just this man and his wife who would stand on the steps of the church and invite people in. And there'd often be tourists and others that were passing the steps. And this man and his wife, I don't know, over the years, they must have invited thousands of people just to come into church. And that warm welcome at the door made all the difference, I'm sure, in many, many people's lives. So it's exciting in that way, isn't it, Kirsten?
Yes.
Whether or not you're like an upfront person or you're a person who's standing at the doors, everybody can play a part in welcoming others into church.
Yeah, 100%.
So they can meet Jesus in that place.
Yeah, it is incredibly exciting. And I think that is the incredibly exciting thing about the church and how it can be welcoming to all, because there are not even just so many roles to serve, like you can be on welcome team or you can be on the worship team, or like not just so many roles to serve, but just like so many relationships to be made with people that actually you might never have crossed paths on the street or in your lives. And actually here at church, you have this one common thing where you're like, we just love Jesus. And because of that, like relationships are formed, friendships are made, support networks are there. And yeah, just all because we love Jesus and we're in this same place.
It's amazing, Charis, isn't it? So what we're basically saying then to tie it all together is that Gen Z has its own distinctives, but it's not like a separate group out there.
No.
Groups. And the message is the same for Gen Z as millennials, and we're all the different groups and people right across the world. And it's Jesus and his life and salvation. And as we, the church, live his life together, that's the most attractive thing in the world, isn't it? And it would be wonderful to see more and more people from Gen Z, all generations, coming to know Jesus. Thank you so much, Charis, for all that you shared, and God bless you.